I never imagined that a single act of kindness would lead to an unbelievable twist. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The sun hung low, casting an eerie glow over the park. Trees swayed, whispering secrets like old friends. I was there, resting with shadows that lingered too long. My heart pounded, a frantic drum in my chest. It was a typical Friday, or so I thought. Standing at the edge of the playground, I watched. Kids laughed, their innocent joy cutting through my gloom. I felt alone, lost in a sea of vibrant chaos. My hands trembled as I clutched a crumpled note, the last words my mother had written before the accident. "Stay strong, love you." Each letter weighed heavy like a stone. I wanted to dissolve into the ground, to vanish. Then I saw him. An elderly man, sitting alone on a bench, eyes clouded with age. His expression twisted with an unspoken burden. It tugged at my heart. I approached slowly, unsure of what to say. "Hi," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked up, surprised. I took a breath, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. "Can I sit?" He nodded, a flicker of gratitude igniting his gaze. We talked, just small things at first. He told me about his life, memories spilling like marbles rolling down a hill, bright and scattered. I listened, enthralled by his stories. Each one plucked at strings in my heart. I could feel the space between us filling with warmth, kindness, igniting a spark. Then came that moment. A chilling wind swept through the trees, rustling the leaves like they were whispering something dark. Just as I turned to leave, he grabbed my wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. "You're special, you know. Something big is coming your way." His eyes bore into mine, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. Was he mad? Or was there truth hidden there? The air crackled with tension. I released a shaky breath, laughter escaping my lips nervously. "Yeah, right." But a part of me couldn't shake the unease. "Thank you for your words." As I stepped back, the ground seemed to shift under me. I glanced over my shoulder one last time, but he was gone, as if the shadows had swallowed him whole. I searched, scanning the park, but found only the empty bench, cold and empty as my heart felt. What had just happened? I walked away, my mind racing, heart pounding. I couldn't shake the feeling that his words had meant something deeper. I never imagined that a single act of kindness, shared between a lost girl and a man shrouded in mystery, would spiral into chaos. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The next day felt heavy, each tick of the clock a reminder of the absence that loomed in my life. I awoke to the dull sunlight filtering through my curtains, casting fragmented shadows across my room. The note lay on my nightstand, an anchor to my sorrow, but I couldn't stop thinking about the old man. His words, cryptic yet resonant, had planted unfamiliar seeds of hope deep within me, mingling awkwardly with my grief that I found myself wandering back to the park, drawn by an invisible string. The air felt different today, charged, almost alive. As I approached the playground, the joyous cacophony of children filled my ears, but I felt detached, as if watching a film rather than living the scene. I took a deep breath, attempting to drown my insecurities in the familiar sounds, hoping to grasp onto something, anything that would pull me from this abyss. As I moved past the swings, a glimmer of yellow caught my eye, a familiar face among the sea of laughter. It was Mia, my childhood friend, her vibrant hair bouncing as she chased after a fluttering butterfly. I hesitated, caught between the rekindled memory of our shared innocence and the weight pressing down on my heart. "Mia?" I called out, the name feeling foreign on my tongue after so many months of isolation. She turned, her eyes widening in surprise. As she made her way toward me, beads of worry tangled in her brow. "I haven't seen you in ages. Where have you been? Are you okay?" Her concern was both comforting and suffocating. I offered a weak smile. "Just dealing with some stuff." The words felt inadequate, a fragile curtain shielding the chaos within. "Why don't we take a walk?" she suggested, gesturing towards a quieter path winding through the park. I nodded, grateful for her company and the warmth of her familiar presence. We walked, the autumn air crisp around us, and she filled the silence with stories of her life, school, friends, the mundane hiccups of a teenager. Every light-hearted conversation was a thread pulling me back to life. Yet, just beneath the surface, the grief lurked, ever present, gnawing at my insides. "Do you remember that time we built a fort in my backyard?" she asked, her laughter like a balm to my aching heart. "We thought we could live there forever." "Yeah," I chuckled softly, allowing the memory to wash over me. "We had our entire treasure trove of candy and enough blankets to keep us warm." For the first time in what felt like ages, a genuine smile tugged at my lips. Good times." Her laughter faded slightly as she looked at me, concern flickering within her eyes. "Are you sure you're okay? I've been worried about you." The question hung between us, a fragile thread binding our past with the weight of my present. I swallowed hard, trying to dismiss it without answering. "Really, Mia, I'm fine." She stepped closer, lowering her voice almost to a whisper. "You can talk to me. You know that, right?" I felt a surge of gratitude, but the weight of my mother's note resurfaced, stifling me. I miss her, you know." MIA's gaze softened. "I can't imagine. I wish I had the right words to help." Tears threatened to spill, but I blinked them back. "It's okay." Even just saying it felt like lightening the load ever so slightly. Our steps slowed, and we found ourselves at the edge of the park where the trees grew denser, their branches knotted and intertwining like the tangled mess of emotions within me. "Mia?" A voice called from behind us, cutting through the moment. A boy, tall and athletic with a bright smile, approached. "Hey, you're not ditching us for that sad girl, are you?" "Shut up, Jake," Mia shot back, her tone protective. But the moment of warmth around me faded as my cheeks burned. I turned away from their seemingly harmless banter, feeling like an outsider once more. And then, from behind the trees, a flash of color, a striking red scarf worn by a figure stepping out of the shadows. It was him, the elderly man from yesterday, his gaze piercing yet tempered by kindness. My heart raced, a symphony of emotions swelling within me. Confusion, fear, anticipation. As if sensing me, he met my eyes, the corners of his mouth lighting up with recognition. "I told you something big was coming," he said, his voice deep and resonant, reverberating through the air. Before I could respond, the world seemed to crash in. Jake clapped a hand on my shoulder, laughter spilling over from his words. "Come on, Mia. Let's go find something fun to do." I stood frozen, broken between the past and the present, my heart torn. Jake turned away, unaware of the connection that pulled me in two different directions. The old man's presence against the backdrop of my mundane reality was a dichotomy I couldn't understand. "What do you want?" I blurted out, the question spilling from my lips in desperation. Instead of answering, the man merely smiled, a knowing smile full of secrets and promises. Just then, a shrill scream echoed in the distance, slicing through the air like glass shattering, an urgent cry that drew my attention away. That I turned my head, adrenaline pumping, and suddenly, the world blurred around me as chaos erupted on the playground behind us. Children began to run, and mothers shouted, their faces pale as if angels had plummeted from the sky. "Mia!" I shouted, panic seizing me. But just as I looked back, I realized she was gone. Lost amidst the confusion, a flicker of vibrant hair disappearing into the sea of chaos. In that desperate moment, I felt an unsettling realization dawn upon me. The old man had spoken of something big coming my way, but I hadn't anticipated how quickly it would unravel. The colors around me dulled to a muted canvas, my breath quickening as fear clutched my insides. "Stay strong," I thought, my mother's voice echoing in my mind. But would that be enough as the world around me spiraled into disarray? As the shadows closed in, I could only hope that this sudden storm would not engulf me whole, and I stood paralyzed between the man who had inexplicably appeared in my life and the scene of chaos that had just begun to unfold. The screams echoed like thunder in my ears, a sharp contrast to the muted world I clung to. I turned my attention back to the playground, searching desperately for Mia, but the vibrant colors of her hair had vanished, swallowed by the frantic movements of bodies in panic. Stay calm," I whispered to myself, my heart pounding in rhythm with the chaos around me. The old man's presence steadied me as he approached, cool and composed, while the world erupted into a blur of fear and confusion. He looked at me, his eyes shimmering like stars in a storm, and something deep within me resonated with the calm he emanated. "Where is she?" I asked breathlessly, gesturing wildly toward the playground. The old man simply pointed his chin toward a group of mothers gathered near the entrance. They were forming a barrier around a little boy, trembling and clinging to a man who had fallen from a swing, his arm twisted unnaturally. "She might be over there," he said, his voice steady, like the eye of a storm. The urgency within me surged anew. I pushed through the throng of worried mothers and children, my heart racing as I searched for my friend amidst the rising tide of emotions. The ground felt unsteady beneath my feet, each step echoing like a heartbeat in a rising panic. "Mia," I shouted, desperately scanning faces, each one tinged with fear and uncertainty. The laughter and innocence of earlier had morphed into a scene colored by anxiety, and I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. And then I saw her crumpled at the foot of the slide, her hands covering her face, her body shaking with silent sobs. Relief exploded through me, cutting through the panic like a bolt of sunlight piercing through a stormy sky. "Mia." I rushed toward her, dropping to my knees at her side. She looked up, her blue eyes glistening with unshed tears, and in that moment, the chaos melted into a distant echo, leaving just the two of us within a cocoon of fear and love. I thought her voice trembled, and I pulled her into an embrace, warmth flooding back into the freezing reality of that moment. "Shoo, it's okay," I whispered, holding her tightly as if my arms could shield her from the chaos swirling around us. "I'm here. We're going to be okay." But even as I said those words, the doubt gnawed at me. The old man had retreated slightly, his demeanor still calm as he observed from a distance. I could sense an energy around him, as if he knew something more than what was unfolding before us. For a fleeting moment, I considered asking him how he had known that something big was about to happen, but the urgency of my friend's trembling body pulled me back to the present. "Mia, what happened?" I asked, not wanting to release her from my grasp, but needing to understand her fear. She wiped away her tears hastily, her face flushed. I saw the boy fall. I thought he was hurt really bad, and her voice broke again, and I squeezed her hand, wanting to lend her my strength. Before I could reply, a collective gasp surged through the crowd. Turning toward the commotion, I saw the boy had been lifted, and a paramedic team was rolling in, their serious expressions juxtaposing the childish hues of the playground. A shiver coursed through me as I caught the boy's gaze. The pool of confusion, mixed with pain, reflected my own turmoil. "Everything is going to be okay," the nearest paramedic assured the onlookers, but my heart, still racing, felt anything but secure. Then, from the corner of my eye, I spotted the old man again, watching the boy intently, his expression unreadable. My stomach flipped at the sight of him. Who was he truly? Was he sent to guide me through this storm? And why did I feel an inexplicable connection to his presence amidst the unfolding chaos? As the paramedics began working to stabilize the injured boy, the air grew thick with tension. I turned back to Mia, whose eyes now mirrored uncertainty, but also a flicker of resolve. "Should we help?" she asked, her voice a mixture of apprehension and determination. That question seemed to hang in the air like a single droplet of water suspended before a downpour, a moment of choice between retreating into our fears or stepping forward into the chaos together. "We should," I replied, feeling an unexpected sense of urgency swell within me. "Let's see what we can do." We moved forward together, hand in hand, a tiny spark of hope igniting in the storm around us. Yet, even as we stepped closer to help, I felt an unsettling pressure building, something lurking just beneath the surface. Suddenly, I felt the heat rise in my chest as I recalled what the old man had said. Something big was coming, and I couldn't shake the worry that it wasn't just the chaos. Perhaps it was something darker, poised and waiting. Just then, an authoritative voice boomed from behind us, and I turned to see a police officer ushering us away from the area. "Keep clear, everyone. We need space." As I held onto Mia's hand tightly, I felt a chill radiate from the old man who was now standing at the edge of the scene, watching intently. With heightened awareness, I sensed that the chaos was just the beginning. My heart raced as I looked back, struggling to understand the implications of everything unfolding. I thought I had navigated between grief and hope, but now I stood on the precipice of something marine, unexpected twist that threatened everything I thought I knew. And in that moment, a chilling realization struck. Perhaps this storm was not just about energy, anger, or accidents. It was about change, and whether I was ready to face it would define the path ahead. With uncertainty rushing in, I could only wonder if I had the strength to weather what was to come. The air hung heavy with tension, the cries of the injured boy mingling with the rising chatter of concerned voices. I stood frozen for a moment, thoughts racing like the wind through the trees. The chaos around us had turned from playful innocence to stark reality in an instant, and I could feel each heartbeat pulsing through my veins, a visceral reminder of how fragile everything could be. "Mia," I whispered, squeezing her hand tighter, "we need to move." The police officer's sharp gaze lingered on us, and I could feel the weight of his authority pushing us back, but I wanted to stay. The feeling of urgency wouldn't let go. It was as if every fiber of my being screamed for me to act. Reluctantly, we retreated a few steps, but I kept my eyes on the scene, my heart breaking for the boy who had fallen and the panic swirling among parents and children alike. Surrounded by that turmoil, I felt a stirring in my chest, a spark of determination ignited by Mia's resolve. If we didn't act, who would? "Mia, let's go help the little boy," I said, the words tumbling out before fear could catch up to me. She hesitated, uncertainty flashing in her eyes, but I saw a flicker of understanding, something behind her worry. "Okay," she said, her voice small but firm, and together we moved closer, brushing past the now distracted adults. As we approached, I caught the eye of the paramedic who was leaning over the boy, his brow furrowed with concentration. "Is there anything we can do?" I asked, desperation lining my voice. The paramedic glanced up, surprise flickering across his face before it settled into a weary acknowledgement. "Just stay calm and help keep the area clear." Though it wasn't the dramatic involvement I had hoped for, I felt a sliver of purpose in the mission rolling through me. Cradling her hand, I turned to Mia. "Let's gather some blankets or anything that can make him more comfortable." We dashed toward the nearby picnic area where a few families had left their belongings, scavenging half-empty bags and tilted baskets. As we rummaged through the remnants of laughter and joy, I clutched a soft blanket, its fabric worn but comforting, much like the summer memories it held. "This should help," I said softly, already envisioning how it might wrap around the boy, shielding him from the cold truth of the moment. Suddenly, in the corner of my eye, I saw the old man making his way through the crowd, his eyes strikingly intent, moving with purpose toward the scene. Strangely, he felt out of place, as though he belonged to another world altogether. I stole a glance at Mia, who seemed to sense my unease. "Do you see him?" Mia nodded, her demeanor shifting from fear to curiosity. "He keeps watching." The moment felt surreal. While the paramedics worked to stabilize the situation, I felt the pull of a mystery and a sense of urgency around the old man. There was something about him that felt so familiar, yet shrouded in mystery. It stirred something inside me, an echo of an unspoken bond. Before I could ponder it further, a flash of chaos erupted as a woman burst onto the scene, breathless and frantic, calling out the boy's name. "Jake! Jake! Where are you?" Her voice cut through the noise, shattering the temporary calm that had settled as the paramedics worked. A chill coursed through my veins, and I instinctively grasped Mia's hand tighter. This was real, and suddenly I realized the weight of anxious resolve. The world around us focused into a singular point of panic. What if something happened before his mother could reach him? "Mia, we need to help keep her calm. Can you do that?" I urged, hoping that her steadfast optimism could guide the situation. "They'll try," she exclaimed, surprising me with the ferocity of her spark. I watched as she moved toward the distraught woman. For a moment, I could only stare, pride swelling inside me like a wave. As I turned back to the activity around the boy, the old man drew nearer. "It is important to have courage in moments like this," he said, his voice carrying over the clamor, and I was surprised by how his words reached me amidst the chaos. "What do you mean?" I asked, unable to look away from him. "The storms may transform everything into chaos," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "But amidst the darkest tempest, kindness can shape our reality. Watch." Just then, the boy let out a low whimper, and I felt my heart clench. The paramedics were speaking in hushed tones, assessing, discussing. Time stuttered as my heart raced. What if this moment would alter everything? Mia returned, her hand shaking slightly as she held a bottle of water. I told her we're here, that Jake is going to be okay, she said, her voice a touch unsteady but resolute. I smiled, bolstered by her strength, but deep down a new dread began to swell. The weight of uncertainty tethered me to the ground. What if Jake didn't make it? Doubt clawed at my insides. I turned to the old man, desperate for answers, and before I could voice my fears, he stepped closer, his eyes boring into mine. There will be more tempests ahead, he revealed, the weight of his words hanging in the air. But remember, in every storm, new paths are forged. Only through love and understanding can we walk those paths together. Just as those words settled in, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I felt a rush of dread as I pulled it out, the screen lighting up with a message I never anticipated. Her fear deepened, morphing into something wider as I read the words. I need you. We can't keep it a secret any longer. My breath hitched, and I looked up at Mia, whose eyes reflected concern. Everything began to blur together: the boy, his mother, the old man's words, and the message that seemed intent on tearing apart whatever fragile stability we had. As the storm raged on, I felt the ground shift beneath me, and with it, the certainty of my reality began to unravel. What did that unexpected message mean? What secret hovered just out of reach, waiting to reveal itself? My heart raced as I clenched Mia's hand, eyes darting from the paramedics to the old man whose presence seemed woven into the fabric of fate. Everything felt precarious, and I could sense the impending storm cloaked in shadows, lurking just beyond the horizon. The hospital lights flickered overhead as I sat in the cramped waiting room, my pulse thrumming with a mixture of anxiety and hope. Mia was beside me, her small hand still resting in mine, but even her presence felt dimmed by the weight of uncertainty that hung between us. The sterile smell blended with the faint chirp of machines echoing in the distance, and each tick of the clock resonated like a drum in my ears. Jake had been transported here, but now, while we waited for news, time seemed to stretch infinitely. I could feel the burden of the old man's words etched across my mind. New paths are forged, but how could those paths be navigated when everything felt so perilous? What do you think is taking so long? Mia asked quietly, her eyes flitting from the door to the clock. Her voice was small, as if it might shatter under the weight of the emotions swirling between us. I don't know, I replied, forcing my voice to be steady. Maybe they're just being extra careful. But even as I said it, doubt gripped my heart. The paramedics had acted swiftly, but why was the silence so loud now? Minutes crept by, stretching into an agonizing eternity. I felt helpless, caught between wishing for news and fearing what it might bring. The memory of that frantic mother calling for Jake echoed in my mind, her terror so palpable that I clutched Mia's hand tighter, seeking comfort in her presence. Just then, a figure emerged from the hallway, tall and imposing, a doctor clad in scrubs, his expression obscured by shadows. It was as if he moved in slow motion, and when he finally reached us, I held my breath. Are you family? He asked, his tone even, yet I could detect an undercurrent of gravity. We're friends, I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Is Jake okay? The doctor hesitated, glancing at the floor for a brief moment before meeting my gaze with an earnestness that filled me with dread. He's stable now, but he's going to need a lot of care moving forward. There's some neurological concern, and we'll need to keep him under observation for a while. Relief washed over me for just a second, but my mind was already tangled in the butt. Can we see him? I asked, unable to mask the urgency in my tone. Just a moment, he replied, hands poised on the clipboard at his side, as if he was about to deliver further news. The air stilled, pregnant with anticipation. Is he awake? Mia piped up, her eyes shining with a flicker of optimism. The doctor hesitated again, his eyes searching ours. He isn't fully conscious yet. The sedation was necessary due to the pain levels and his head injury. He paused, letting the information sink in. If you'd like, I can let you know when he's awake. But I recommend giving it time for him to rest. A flash of disappointment coursed through me. I needed to see Jake, to reassure ourselves that our kindness had made a difference, that our actions hadn't been in vain. Thank you, I managed, though it felt like a hollow gesture. As the doctor stepped away, I felt motion behind me. The old man, who had been lingering at a distance, approached. He looked like a guardian of secrets poised to share something profound. His gaze met mine, and for a moment, the world outside faded. "Your kindness has already made ripples," he said quietly, his voice soothing yet grave. "But be prepared sometimes. The truth comes at a steep price." "What do you mean?" I asked, desperation tinging my voice. "What truth?" He met my question with an intensity that made my heart race. "Sometimes, when we act selflessly, we are faced with an unexpected cost. But remember, not all losses are devastating. They can lead to new beginnings." Before I could respond, the door swung open again. A nurse stepped forward, her uniform a stark white against the muted colors of the waiting room. "Is there Mia here?" My heart leapt. "Yes," she responded, bounding to her feet. The nurse gestured for Mia to follow her. "We need your help with Jake. He's stable, but we think he'll respond better to a familiar voice. Would you like to come see him?" My chest tightened as I faced a choice, to let her go to Jake or to follow. "Mia, wait," I started, but the nurse had already led her into the back, and I was left in a spiraling vortex of uncertainty. The fleeting moment of hope surged, but it was instantly following by a wave of panic. What if she didn't come back? What if something happened to Jake that she wouldn't be ready for? All kinds of scenarios played out in my mind like a film searching for an ending that I glanced back at the old man, who was watching me carefully. "You see?" he said, his voice a soft murmur. "That uncertainty can be both terrifying and enlightening." As the minutes climbed, I fought against the restlessness bubbling within me. I couldn't just sit and wait. My phone buzzed again, and I saw a new message flash across the screen. "Meet me. I can't do this alone anymore." Panic surged through me, clenching my stomach. Who needed me? What did they want? The old man's gaze bore into my being. "Sometimes, the answers we seek call from beyond our fears. But there's still so much more to uncover. Are you prepared for what lies ahead?" With my heart racing, I sensed the ground shifting beneath me again as truths began to unravel. And as I held my breath, torn by the choices unspooling before me, I realized that every step forward led me closer to revelations I could hardly fathom. The storm was simply gathering its strength, waiting to break when least expected. The waiting room felt smaller than ever, each clock tick ricocheting off the sterile walls, mingling with my spiraling thoughts. The nurse had taken Mia away, and now a chasm of silence swelled between us. I stared at the door, willing it to open again, to reveal the comfort of familiar smiles and calm voices. But instead, it loomed like a barrier, isolating me from whatever moment was unfolding beyond its confines. Just then, the old man returned to my side, moving like a specter through the anxious energy humming around us. I couldn't fathom what he sought to communicate, yet the intensity in his eyes spoke of truths tethered to his heart. "Do you believe in the power of words?" he asked gently. That I met his gaze, the weight of uncertainty draping over me like a thick fog. "I don't know. Right now, words just feel empty. The right words at the right moment can mend what's broken," he said, "or unveil what is hidden. You may be able to help Mia and Jake, but first, can you help yourself?" I shifted uncomfortably as his question echoed. How could I help myself when it felt like everything was teetering on the edge of chaos? "What do you mean? Can you be brave enough to voice your fears?" He didn't wait for an answer, merely letting the weight of his gaze sink deeper into my heart. "You might find that once you articulate your pain, the chains holding you back will begin to unravel." The heaviness in my chest seemed to shift, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something flicker inside me, an ember, a hint of bravery wrapped in desperation. Yet, before I could explore it further, the ventilation system released a harsh wheeze, jolting me from my thoughts. That I pulled out my phone once more, hoping to find clarity in someone's voice. Yet deep down, every word on the screen felt like ashes in my hands. I tapped the message again, the plea echoing in my mind. "Meet me. I can't do this alone anymore." My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. Who had sent this? And why did it stoke an unsettling realization within me? With each second that slipped away, the thought gnawed like a rat on my conscience. Was this about Jake? Or was it something darker, rooted in secrets left unspoken? As if on cue, the old man continued, Fear often binds us in ways we cannot see. Sometimes it takes a leap into the unknown to find your footing again. The promise of those words was intoxicating, even if the implication behind them frightened me. What if I'm not ready? What if my response only plunges me deeper? I spoke, a raw edge creeping into my voice. His expression softened. Then you'll learn. You'll grow. But I can tell you this. Leaving what needs to be faced in darkness will only prolong the anguish. Will you join the light? Before I could answer, the door swung open again, and Mia emerged, her petite frame momentarily overshadowed by the frame of a nurse. Relief flooded through me. I rushed to her side, enveloping her in an embrace that lingered as an exclamation of all the fears I'd been holding at bay. What happened? Are you okay? She nodded, though a flicker of something deeper flickered in her eyes. It was different, but I think he can hear me, she said, her voice soft yet hopeful. They say he's fighting. He just needs to know we're here. Of course he does, I murmured, still grounded by the warmth of her embrace. But underlying that warmth was a lingering anxiety, a gnawing worry that all of this was only the appetizer before a banquet of unpalatable truths. Jake might be awake soon, she added, but the hopeful swell in her voice was shadowed by uncertainty. But there's something I need to tell you. When I was with him, said something. My heart stopped for a brief second. What did he say? She hesitated, the weight of her words pressing against the quiet. It was right before they gave him more meds. He called out my name. And then he said, "The truth is more dangerous than you think." Her words left a chilling aftertaste in the air between us. I felt the old man's presence beside us, his silence loud with anticipation. "Do you see?" he whispered, as if confirming something I had yet to acknowledge. Even the light carries shadows. That I turned back to Mia, uncertainty swirling in my chest, blending with the threads of hope still lingering shyly. "Mia, we need to find out what that means. If Jake knows something." But before I could finish, the nurse returned, a somber expression settling on her features. "It's time. Jake is awake now." We shared a glance, a silent understanding passing between us. Every thread of hope tightened as I stood beside Mia, my hand nearly crushing her fingers within mine. Would the truth we discovered be a balm or a blade? "Are you ready?" she whispered, her eyes shining with steely determination. As we walked towards the room, each step felt heavy and weightless simultaneously. The door loomed ahead, the threshold to our rising anxiety and burgeoning hope. What awaited us on the other side could shatter us or illuminate the path forward. I took a deep breath, bracing for the moment that would change everything. And just as I reached for the doorknob, a thought struck me, echoing the old man's warning. Sometimes, the whispers of kindness carry shattering consequences, and I could only hope that we were ready to face them together. The door creaked open, revealing Jake's hospital room. The sterile scent of antiseptic mingled with an underlying warmth, the stark white walls nearly glowing in the soft lighting. Jake lay there, fragile yet resolute, a tangle of wires threading through the shield of his body, alert yet still tethered to fragile dreams. His eyes fluttered open, and as they focused, a flicker of recognition shot across his face. "A spark among the shadows, Mia?" he croaked, his voice raspy, as if each word were molded from the dust of lingering dreams. The two of us stood still for a moment, caught in the gravity of longing and fear. I felt Mia squeeze my hand tighter, and I wanted to reach out, to tap into the strength Chris once radiated. But now attention felt different, like balancing on a tightrope spun from heartbreak. "Yes, it's me," she said, her voice trembling yet filled with a gentle urgency. She stepped forward, and I followed her closely, a silent witness to a moment laced with hope, yet riddled with uncertainty. His gaze softened, yet his brow knitted as he processed our presence. "You came," he murmured as a faint smile emerged, and while it flickered with warmth, a trace of fear lingered, hinting at deeper layers yet to be unearthed. "Yes, we're here," I added, trying to summon my courage. "We want you to tell us what you meant about the truth." Jake's expression shifted, the previous warmth submerged by shades of worry. He struggled to find the words, his fingers twitching as though to grasp something just out of reach. "It's not safe to talk. Not yet. Not safe," Mia whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "What do you mean by that?" The strain in Jake's face deepened. "There are things I can't explain now." He glanced around the room, his eyes wide with a calculated trepidation. They could hurt you. A knot tied itself tightly in my stomach. Who could hurt us? What do you know? I'm sorry. He winced as if sharing the weight of those words physically pained him. Listen, you need to trust me. You need to stay away. At least for now. We can't just walk away. I insisted, my anger flaring. You're our only chance to understand what's happening, Jake. You can't shut us out. Mia shot me a warning look that mirrored her own deep-seated fears. He's right, Jake. If you're telling us to leave, we need to understand why. Why would someone hurt us? For a moment, he seemed lost, floating in an ocean of confusion. Then, he finally forced out, you have to know the truth can be more dangerous than you think, because it reveals who we are and who we aren't. There it was again, the echo of his earlier words. I could almost feel the gravity of untold secrets pressing against us, choking the hope hanging in the air. Tell us. I pressed, desperate for clarity. Please. He looked away, his gaze drifting to an old photograph stuck to the wall, an artifact of a happier time, capturing moments long past. It felt surreal, this juxtaposition of joyous memories against the harsh reality of the present. In that silence, hope flickered, giving birth to a thought. What if it didn't just end here? What if we had more allies than foes? Jake. MIA's voice broke through my relentless thoughts, urging him forward. Pleased, he finally turned back to us, the defiance in his gaze mingling with resignation. Whatever I say, it's not just about me. There are bigger things at play. Just promise me you'll stay safe. Safe? I scoffed, hatred toward the concept pouring from my lips. How can we be safe when we don't understand? With effort, he lifted a hand, beckoning us closer, while the love that coursed between the three of us felt like a life vest in a sea of turmoil. Then listen carefully. You were never meant to be drawn into this. But they will come for you, too, if you don't tread lightly. Who will come? I asked, and just then, a sharp knock echoed against the door. The nurse paused outside, looking slightly worried before she stepped in, tension filling the space. Jake, you need to settle down. You're going to disturb other patients if you keep speaking so loudly. But Jake's eyes stayed fixed on mine, communication passing in the way only allies could. We'll talk later, he whispered urgently, his voice measured. The nurse began to fuss with the equipment in the room, clearing the charged air, and I flinched at the unsettling thought, what would happen to us if we continued down this path? Was there even a path? I caught Jake's gaze once more, and even in the slight flutter of his eyelashes, I sensed uncertainty, and just as immediately resolved, we slipped outside the threshold together, the nurse's back to us. And in that moment, the world exploded. Alarms lit up like the 4th of July, echoing through the halls. What is happening? Mia screamed, dropping to the floor. Run. Jake's voice bellowed through the chaos, but it felt so far away, like echoes of a dream. As the first responders surged across the foot of the hallway, I realized in horror it was every answer we'd sought revealed through a single pulse of chaos, each second thickening like syrup. And as fear gripped my heart, drowning me in uncertainty, one chilling thought ignited above the noise that rattled my soul. Whatever lay ahead would surely shake our foundation, and the cracks were already beginning to spread. The alarms rang ferociously, a clamor that seemed to reverberate through the very core of my being. Panic erupted in shades of chaos, striking strangers who darted from one end of the corridor to the other, faces taut with urgency and desperation. I felt Mia's fingers tighten around mine, her grip a lifeline amid the tumult. Where do we go? She shouted over the cacophony, her eyes scanning the hall desperately, searching for a sanctuary in the pandemonium. Back to his room, I yelled, my mind racing along with my heartbeat. We have to figure out what's happening. But instinct swept over us like a tide, propelling us toward the nearest exit instead of retreating to the uncertainties of the hospital room. The possibility of having to face whatever terror lay in Jake's warnings felt insurmountable. At that moment, I wanted more than anything to barge into the room, to shake Jake, to demand answers. Yet the thought of his frail body caught between life and the abyss grounded me, a weight I couldn't bear to consider further. As we stumbled down the corridor, the world narrowed to flashes of sirens and frantic voices. I noticed a nurse, her brow furrowed in concern. She steadied herself against the wall as she aimed to guide patients toward safety. Something in me seized with gratitude. Her quiet determination felt like a beacon, a reminder that even small acts of kindness could illuminate a dark path. "Are you two okay?" she asked, her voice rising above the surrounding chaos. "You need to stay close to me." Without waiting for a response, she ushered us toward a small waiting area just off the main corridor, marked only by a flickering fluorescent light. Mia hesitated. "What about Jake?" she pleaded, glancing back the way we'd come. "That we can't. He said to stay safe," I urged, the exhilaration of fear pressing me forward. But deep inside, guilt churned. He was our friend, our ally in this battle against the unseen forces, a connection woven with vulnerabilities we had never fully acknowledged. In that small waiting area, the noise felt muffled, the weight of commotion giving way to a haunting silence. Everywhere I turned, I saw people clinging to each other, a tapestry of fear and uncertainty woven tightly by the threads of concern. Amongst strangers, I felt profoundly isolated, my heart wrestling between fleeing and returning. Mia let out a small cry. "What if something's wrong with him?" I wanted to assure her, wanted to press my hand to the surface of doubt tracing her features, to tell her Jake was strong enough to face whatever struck him down. The uncertainty, however, knotted my thoughts as easily as my heartstrings. Yet just as I opened my mouth to comfort her, the nurse's eyes flashed with alarm. "Stay here," she instructed us, and she rushed back into the chaos, leaving us to our swirling fears and a growing sense of helplessness. "Do you think we should go back?" Mia asked, her voice trembling slightly, not just from fear, but from recognition of the emotional weight we'd been avoiding. "Don't know," I admitted, my head spinning. "Maybe we need to know what we're really up against." But my mind churned with the visceral memory of Jake's warning. The very essence of his plea loomed, filling the cracks between our shared moments. "They will come for you too." Suddenly, a chilling cry pierced through the walls of the waiting area, sharp, guttural, laced with terror. It caught my breath, silencing every lingering thought I held. A fragment of understanding clicked into place. This wasn't just an ordinary emergency. It felt like the foreboding crescendo of destinies colliding. "That I can't sit here," I said, adrenaline urging me. "We have to look for Jake. Now." Mia's hesitation was palpable, but I could see within her the same flicker of determination igniting, the same spirit that propelled us forward after every heartbreak. "Together?" she replied, her gaze unwavering. "Always," I affirmed, equal parts dread and hope twining around my resolve. As we stepped back into the tempest of the hospital corridor, purpose sharpened beneath my skin. But as we rounded a corner, we were greeted by an unexpected sight. A small group had gathered, and at the center was Jake, supported by two paramedics. His ghostly pallor contrasted against the comforting colors of the staff uniforms, yet he seemed remarkably steady, eyes locked onto something or someone off in the distance. "Jake!" I yelled, instinctively lunging forward, but my heart plummeted as everything unraveled into stillness. "He was no." He couldn't be, shaking his head, urging the paramedics to back off. "What is he doing?" Mia gasped, panic knotting her voice, as adrenaline surged in tandem with rising dread. "Jake, please," I shouted again, battling the tide of anxiety flooding through me. But then, a sharp intake of breath drew our attention, stealing our eyes from Jake's fragile stance to the figure approaching through the throngs of chaos. A tall silhouette edged forward, the glow of the emergency lights swirling around, revealing familiar features twisted in anxiety. "Chris?" I sputtered, disbelief snaking through my thoughts. His presence seemed to defy gravity, bridging the gap between loss and hope, a singular act of appearance that felt impossibly kind in a world tumbling into shadows. I thought we had lost him forever, and yet, here he stood just as uncertain, just as tempestuous as the chaos surrounding us. But as he locked eyes with me, an unreadable expression washed across his features. There was something hauntingly urgent within them, something tethered to unfathomable truths that unraveled before us. And then Jake shouted louder than before. "Get away from him. You don't know what you're doing." With that, the room pulled tight around us, every fiber vibrating with a new revelation. The twist of fate we hadn't anticipated was unraveling, and I could only wonder how far it would stretch once unleashed. The room pulsed with tension as Jake's voice cut through the chaos, reverberating with finality. I barely registered the fact that Chris had returned his presence a bittersweet bomb and a glaring question mark all at once. "Jake, please," I implored, desperately needing clarity. "What do you mean? What's going on?" My voice trembled as I took one cautious step closer, caught between the desire to support my friend and the instinct to shield myself from whatever was unspooling before us. Mia tugged at my sleeve, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is he losing it?" "He looks just listen." I squeezed her hand, focusing on Jake, whose weary eyes darted back and forth like a wounded animal. "We're here for you, buddy. Just tell us what we need to know." But Jake's gaze was fixed on Chris, his body tense, as though ready to strike at any moment. "You need to go. They're coming for you." And his voice cracked, the weight of the truth seeping through. "He's not safe." Silence enveloped us, heavy and suffocating. "What do you mean, Jake? What about Chris?" I asked, desperate to bridge the widening chasm. It hurt to see my friend fraying at the edges, an echo of his once steadfast self. Chris stepped forward, earnest and defiant. "Jake, I'm here to help. We had a plan, remember? Don't you trust me?" But Jake refused to meet his eyes. His expression morphed into one of fierce protection. "You think it's that easy? You don't know what they've done to you. To us." Fear clawed at my throat, assaulting what little composure remained. What have they done?" My words came out in a choked whisper, a panic strumming through my veins. Before Jake could answer, an ominous sound echoed from the far end of the corridor, the unmistakable hiss of whispering shadows skirting just at the edges of illumination. Mia gasped, her eyes wide with terror, and I felt her grip tighten around my wrist. The air grew thick and electric, every moment stretching out like a fragile heartbeat ready to burst. "Run!" Jake shouted suddenly, his fear igniting a desperate need within me to act. "Get out now. They'll hold them back." But as his plea hung in the air, my heart sank. "We can't leave you. We can't," I screamed, but my conviction was met with a crescendo of urgency. "Go. Now." And with an intensity one had never witnessed, Jake surged forward, shoving Chris away, facing whatever darkness approached with a fierce resolve. I stood frozen, torn between instinct and loyalty, grappling with the looming question of whose side the truth lay on. "Lena, we have to," Mia started, but was interrupted by the sound of a door slamming open with the force of a gavel, and from the shadows emerged figures clad in dark uniforms. Recognition sent ice through my veins, my mind racing through the possibilities. This was no random emergency crew. Something far more sinister loomed, and suddenly, Chris, usually a steady anchor, seemed out of place among them. "What is happening?" I yelled, desperation flooding my voice. But as I looked into Chris' eyes, the betrayal hung like a storm cloud brewing overhead. "Lena, just trust me," he returned, but there was a tremor in his voice, seeds of doubt flowering in the uncertainty of his assurances. "We're on the same side." But Jake wasn't backing down. "You can't let them take you. They'll use you. You need to run." The urgency in his tone snapped me out of my shock, igniting the fight within me. With one last glance at Mia, her eyes pleading for direction, I made my decision. Unraveling the threads of what should have been profound loyalty, I began to surge toward Jake. "No, I'm not leaving you." A split second of hesitation weighed on Chris, who twisted between loyalty and fear as he grasped my arm. "If you go, you won't come back. They'll get you too." The gravity of his warning sank in, dawned on me like a chilling whisper of fate, and that moment of doubt wove through my heart like a venomous vine. With Jake's voice echoing in my ears, I felt the shattering weight of choice pressing in. And then, as the confrontation escalated, everything began to unravel. The air filled with electric anticipation, the shadows twisted then transformed into something unfathomable. They moved with a predatory grace toward us, and the realization sank like a stone. Jake wasn't just cornered. He was prepared to sacrifice everything. The world spiraled in a whirlwind of chaos, the screaming alarms blaring louder than our hearts. And as Jake stood defiant, I felt something snap within me far beyond the moment. Far beyond our tangible fears, I was left standing at the precipice between two worlds, caught in an incandescent clash of loyalty and survival between Jake's stubborn defiance and Chris' ambiguous truth. "Lena," Jake shouted, his voice a lone anchor in the tumult. "You need to choose. But as clarity faded like a flickering light, the shadows reared, and something unexplainable ignited in the corridor, laced with promises and dire threats, the unmistakable shift toward a revelation yet to unfold. As the darkness collided with the light, it would pulse forward in a terrible flash. Where the path led from this moment on, I could only hope to discover before it consumed us all. I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my chest, caught in the eye of a storm that threatened to tear us apart. The urgency of Jake's warning hung in the air like a sword at my throat. You need to choose. But how could I make that choice when every option felt drenched in fear and uncertainty? I looked between Jake, steadfast and resilient despite the impending shadows, and Chris, whose expression swirled with a mixture of desperation and something darker. Why are they coming for us? I asked, desperation coating my words, hoping for clarity in the chaos. Jake's eyes bore into mine. Because they know, he said, his voice trembling. They know about the truth you've stumbled upon about the power of kindness and what it can unravel. Before I could respond, the looming shadows shifted, tension coiling tighter around us. The approaching figures hummed with a strange energy, their presence unsettling, both familiar and foreign. Each moment stretched into infinity as I tried to piece together the fragmented puzzle spiraling out of control. Run! Jake shouted again, urgency bursting like fire within him. Get out of here while you still can. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. No. We'll face this together, over their actions. Finally, as if the battle was choosing its victor, Chris took a faltering step forward. You're right. The words, soft yet resolute, cut through the burgeoning storm. We need to reveal what we've kept hidden together. Just as those words hung delicately in the air, a powerful energy emanated around us. A wave crashing softly, yet undeniably as bonds of grace intertwined with courage. The shadows began to break, fissures of light slicing through the darkness in delicate ribbons, illuminating the path ahead. Forward, I urged, feeling empowered as I surged toward the flickering light. Let's discover what lies beyond. We charged into the light, hearts racing, hope blooming fiercely. The shadows lessened, retreating as the radiance began to unearth the buried secrets. It was daunting, yet I leaned into the power we shared, drawing strength from the truth we dared not hide any longer. And then, before us, a moment of incredible clarity. A shift occurred among us, an understanding birthed from raw honesty and the undeniable power of unity. This is just the beginning, I breathed as we pressed on, nudging against the edges of the truth we dared to claim. As the shadows dispersed, leaving echoes of uncertainty behind, we emerged into a new dawn. Our journey was paved ahead, embracing every possibility and every truth that had been obscured by fear. In that moment, I understood that the power we wielded, forged through friendship and love intertwined with vulnerability, would carry us onward. And as we stepped into the unknown, the light of a new path illuminated our way, igniting hope that would guide us through the storms ahead, together. Always together in the light and in the heart of our choices. And as the last of the shadows slipped away, I whispered under my breath, we can face anything as long as we choose each other.